Canberra CBD Ltd was set up to enliven the city with marketing initiatives and with city improvements. But let's look at where it all started.
The mission to give Canberra City Centre a facelift is well underway. The ACT Planning and Land Authority today called for non-profit organisations to oversee the City Heart levy.
Civic businesses have been pleading for the city to be revitalised for some time, and now the government and ACTPLA are looking for prospective candidates to control the way the levy will be spent through a grant program.
Finding ways to raise the profile of the central business area through things like events management, centre management, the way that the place is presented, through its advertising, through its cleanliness.
The size of the grant will depend on the amount of levy collected in a financial year and is likely to vary over the 5-year period. Today, a handful of interested parties attended a public information session to gauge the true effects of the levy.
People, including myself and interest and stakeholders of the city, will get a better understanding of how the government envisages that this grant process will go forward.
Businesses hope the levy will improve the cultural offerings already on hand in the nation's capital.
Marketing and promoting the city not only within Canberra but within the region and the whole of Australia to increase the visitations here and to stimulate business activity.
Tenders close on
Canberra CBD Ltd was set up between the City Heart Business Association and the ACT division of the Property Council of Australia, along with prominent city property owners. A deed of grant exists between the ACT Government and Canberra CBD Ltd to administer the Marketing and Improvements Levy.
The city centre will receive a $1.4 million grant for a makeover as soon as July. The successful tender of the city centre levy hopes the funds will inject a breath of fresh air into the CBD.
It's taken years and caused a lot of controversy, but Civic is set for a facelift. $1.4 million each year for the next 5 years will go towards livening up our city centre.
What our organisation will look to do is inject some human scale into the whole thing, have activities for both the people who live and work in the city but also for people who visit it.
While the government will act as the banker, how the funds will be distributed will be up to Canberra CBD Ltd, a consortium of City Heart traders and the Property Council.
What we have here is a number of the traders and the risk takers in the area have different levels of risk and different levels of resource.
Changes will start taking place almost immediately, with cleanliness and safety top priorities. But don't expect too much too soon.
We won't see a magical transformation of the city in a short term. This is something that's got to develop incrementally.
Kelly Clappis, Win News.
Property owners were consulted on how to add life to the city to ensure a safer, cleaner CBD for the residents, for the workers and for the businesses. The suggestions were varied. However, the Sydney and Melbourne building always feature as the place to start.
The push is on to make Civic the thriving central hub of the territory. Following the introduction of the City Heart levy, stakeholders and retailers are now discussing the best way to take their visions for the city forward.
The controversial levy, which requires commercial property owners in Civic to contribute to the maintenance and promotion of the city centre, came into force in July this year. Last night, interested parties came together to put their ideas in writing to present to the Stanhope government as part of an ongoing consultation process.
We wanted to provide the key stakeholders and the public with an opportunity to workshop through the issues, identify what they saw to be the real problems and see if we could work to some solutions.
The Sydney and Melbourne buildings were hot topics of discussion.
Nothing's happened to these buildings on Northbourne Avenue. The government has not touched these. The last 20 years, the concrete's still the concrete that was there, and it really needs attention.
As was the general look and feel of Civic itself.
The main issue is that the general look of the place, to start with, the unkept properties and the back of house areas, if you like, the trade waste, which all are short-term and can be resolved.
And they might get a uniform paint colour on the outside of the buildings, get some common garbage collection points, perhaps open up the inner courtyards.
As for the bigger vision for the area, some novel ideas are being canvassed.
Well, I'd like to see the Northbourne Avenue taken out and put underground and basically have a piazza integrating both the Melbourne and Sydney buildings.
The funds from the levy will start rolling out in the new year. Kelly Clappis.
There are plans to transform Civic from a dull business district into a major cultural hub. The Canberra business community has banded together to give the city a $5 million makeover to make it more enticing to visitors.
Canberra doesn't have a reputation as a thriving metropolis, but that's something Canberra CBD Ltd wants to change. A few months ago, the government imposed a compulsory levy on businesses in the city centre, with the money to be spent on improving Civic. Now the plan for the future.
Try and enliven the open spaces, which in turn encourages people to set up their businesses, and then we can create this street cafe culture.
It's all about revitalisation. It's all about telling everybody in Canberra and interstate just what a wonderful place the City Heart really is.
Business groups hopeful the move will draw people back into the city.
Many town planners have criticised Canberra's civic region as lacking heart, saying it's not an inviting place for people to walk around or spend leisure time.
There needs to be a perception that the city's a good place to live as well as work.
Well, I think it's been a tremendous first 12 months for CBD. It's something of an experiment. There was an element of risk in the creation of CBD, the imposition of a levy on the property owners here in the city, but I think it's worked fantastically well. We see it about us. The city's brighter, there's more life, the flowers, the lights, and the partnerships that we've been able to create between CBD and the government have been tremendous. We have partnerships on the Sydney and Melbourne building. We have partnerships on this new campaign to get people to shop here in Canberra to celebrate here in these difficult times. I think it's been just a tremendous success.
This is Win News.
The ACT government is relaunching its Shop Locally campaign, urging Canberrans to get behind the local retail industry. The campaign was first launched just before Christmas and is being reinvigorated to coincide with the federal government's cash payments.
Working with the ACT government is an important role for Canberra CBD Ltd. We're not trying to take over government tasks, but we'd like to enhance the work that they do. We also have a role to advise the ACT government on issues that are important to the property owners in the city. So after urging from Canberra CBD Ltd, the Chief Minister agreed to spend some capital funds on the Sydney and Melbourne buildings.
Meanwhile, the ACT government will spend $100,000 on a planning study for the future of the Sydney and Melbourne buildings in Canberra City. Chief Minister John Stanhope says the study will look at developing laneways and arcades similar to Melbourne's inner city.
Earlier this year, the ACT government released their action plan with details of further funding for the city's public spaces, a plan that was welcomed by the property owners in the CBD.
The heart of Canberra CBD is about to undergo a major transformation. A new plan aims to double the number of people living in Civic. Major surface car parks are set to make way for new residential and office towers.
The government wants to attract 5,000 more residents and 8,000 more workers into the CBD.
We believe that over this next 5 years the private sector will invest in the order of $1.5 billion in the city centre, in new residential accommodation, in upgrades to existing shops.
$70 million of public funds will be spent sprucing up some of the CBD's 22 hectares of public space. Another $20 million will go towards more bus stops in City West, turning Marcus Clark Street into 4 lanes and upgrading Constitution Avenue. But the idea isn't to get more people driving. On the contrary, the cost of parking will rise to entice more Canberrans onto public transport.
Parking in the city centre of Canberra is cheaper than it is in Wollongong or Newcastle or Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane.
CBD Ltd says much of the plan is achievable and there is room for 5,000 more residents.
There are a number of buildings in the city that are probably getting towards the end of their use-by date. They could be redeveloped.
The public is being invited to have its say on the draft plan. The Property Council and the opposition would like to see it form part of a broader study.
You can't do it unless you do the broader planning for infrastructure and how you're going to grow the rest of the city as well as the CBD.
Lachlan Kennedy.
Well, I hope you'll agree with me that Canberra CBD Ltd has an exciting future, working with the property owners in the city to enliven the city spaces and to add some major improvements. In a nutshell, adding life to the city.